Welcome back, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad to have you here with us for the co-sheltering solutions for domestic violence shelters Q&A section. So today, just as a reminder, if you weren't able to join us in our first session, we are discussing, this session is a follow-up to our last presentation where we're asking that the presenters share a little bit more about their work through a Q&A session. And just as a reminder, I'm going to introduce folks to our panelists today. First, we have Jaki MacKinnon, who during her 20 years as executive director at Bethesda House Women's Shelter, she and her team strive to reduce as many barriers as possible to women accessing services. In 2013, they tackled one of the biggest barriers of all, women's not being able to bring pets and not being able to access shelter with them. They became the first women's domestic violence shelter in the province of Ontario, Canada, to co-shelter women and their pets and together in the women's rooms. And we also have Val Pena, who is the communications coordinator for the Animal Welfare Institute Safe Havens for Pets program. She is a graduate of the George Washington University with a degree in political communications. Val has developed the organization's unique national directory of services for individuals facing housing insecurity with pets. Additionally, Val provides direct support to survivors with pets and oversees the ongoing maintenance of the Safe Haven for Pets directory, which connects individuals experiencing domestic violence to pet-friendly resources. She also manages the program's social media platform and leads communication campaigns aimed at raising awareness and engaging communities to support these vital efforts. And finally, we also have Orazie Cook, who is the founder of Praline's Backyard Foundation. Orazie is dedicated to helping domestic violence survivors find housing for their pets, ensuring that no survivor has to choose between safety of a beloved animal she has a background in animal welfare and advocacy. Orazie works at the intersection of holistic support to survivors and animals, creating impactful partnerships to provide safe space for both humans and pets in need. And I'm Zoe, I share her pronouns, and I am the Director of Engagement and Program Development with BestyBnB, and I also work as the co-chair for the Equitable Access to Veterinary Care Working Group through the Co-Sheltering Collaborative, and I'm your moderator today. As a reminder, if you have questions that you would like to ask Jaki or Val, please do so. Please add those questions in the Whova platform Q&A section. I can keep track of what questions have been asked and what questions need to still get to. It looks like we might be having some technical issues in trying to find Orazie. Orazie, if you wouldn't mind turning your camera on so we can find you. There
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I wasn't on. Sorry. Here I
we go.
am.
Fantastic. That way we can spotlight you. All right. So I created a couple of questions to get us started, and then we'll go into the questions from the audience. So audience, if you need some time to percolate on those questions, you have it, but also be sure to put that in the Whova app so I can keep an eye on what questions we need to ask. And there is two sections in the Whova app. There is the chat section and the question section. I will check both just to be safe, but please, if you can, remember to put the questions that you have in the Q&A section. All right, and my first question goes to Jaki. Jaki, many domestic violence agencies grapple with the what if concerns. You kind of shared a little bit about that in your presentation, but the what if concerns when considering pet-friendly accommodations, such as like, what if residents or staff have allergies? What if pets pose a liability? How did your organization navigate these concerns and move beyond the barriers to take actionable steps towards providing services for survivors and their pets?
Good question. There were dozens of what ifs when we started back in 2003 and hadn't fully gone officially pet friendly. And so the answer is different for every question, of course. In terms of staff allergies, etc., what we did is we identified a transition point, like a Sunday night, midnight, Monday, we're going to be officially pet friendly. And we had plans in place. We planned in advance, what we were going to do. And up to that transition point, I talked to all the staff, and we had plans that were developed that would support the staff with allergies. We offered to pay for allergy testing and to work with their allergist in order to identify, can they be in a house with animals? Can they be in a room with animals? Does it depend what animal, et cetera, et cetera. And we were willing, because they were already staff with us, we were willing to work with them to come to a mutually agreeable resolution. After the transition point, all our hiring documents indicated that it was a criteria for hiring that you be able to work with animals. So we didn't have any issues after that. We actually never had any issues leading up to the transition point either, because people who had talked about having allergies ended up not coming forward and taking advantage of our program. Everybody just seemed to say, let's give it a shot. And I never heard about any allergies from any of them after that. So, but that's what we did. We put a plan in place leading up to the transition point so that we had our what ifs identified and responded to in our policies manual. Is that clear enough?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing. Orazie, your social media presence has been instrumental in raising awareness and education to thousands about the intersection between animal abuse and domestic violence. Can you share some strategies that contributed to your platform's success? And what advice would you offer organizations who are looking to build a similarly impactful digital presence?
I would just say continue telling the story. Like I just tell stories of who we've helped, or just the data that's out there. Just when things come up in the news, just highlighting, just continually highlighting it. I think this because my continual story is the fact that I think most people just do not know. They don't just really think about that intersection, and I think as people know, they respond. It just happens so often that people say, "Oh, that makes sense." Like they just never thought about it. And I think that just have to continue telling the story, not getting tired of telling the story, because sometimes I think I say the same thing, but it's like the same thing, but you know how these algorithms work. I may say the same thing 5 days a week, and five different sets of people have seen it. So I feel like that works, and so that's just how it happens. So I would encourage anyone that's working in this space, so definitely with social media, you trying to get your story out, however, whether that's on social media or just in the public in general, just continue saying it and continue saying it, because as we recognize, like 40, 50 years ago, domestic violence was acceptable, right? Only when we said no, and people kept saying, no, 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 this isn't acceptable, did it become like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, let's stop this. So that just continue, just stay in the struggle.
Thanks for sharing. I love that perspective of just keep doing it. Keep sharing that story. All right, Val, individuals seeking support through service directories often encounter outdated or case-by-case resources that lead to dead ends. Safe Havens BestyBnB project is an incredible resource, and obviously you do so much work put so much work into making sure that you're finding resources all over the map. What strategies does Safe Havens use to vet service providers and ensure that the information listed remains accurate, accessible, and up to date?
Yeah, this is such a huge issue and something that we're really mindful of directories with lots of listings and information becoming slowly but surely they become outdated over time. So I mentioned this in the previous presentation, but I always do say that our directory is a living directory. It's constantly changing, constantly moving. Things are constantly shifting. We are removing things every day. We're adding things every day. So in terms of strategies, I would say that having a plan and a schedule that breaks down state by state of when we want to check in with them. So we have a plan all the way up until 2026 of states that we're checking into every single day. So myself and other staff members are working, have hands on this at all times, basically all day, every day. And I think it really helps to have a clear outline, a clear plan of almost a calendar format of, okay, this month we're going to hit Illinois and Arkansas. We're going to only devote our time to re-verifying listings in that state. And then the next month it'll be two other states, or, that's kind of the format that we work with. And that has really been working over the years, just because we're able to really focus our time and hone in state by state. And I think that makes a big difference, because when you're really like in the weeds of a state, you can actually then get connected with more resources, because you're talking to people every day. You kind of start to make connections just through the process. Because what we actually do is we call each organization that is listed on our directory. So we do have contact with all 1,300 of the listings we have contacted at one point. Ideally, we like to do it by phone. Sometimes we can do it by email, but we like to get on the phone with a representative, an executive director. It's great too, if they have time. I know they're so busy, but we try to get on the phone with them, and we have a pre-written script where we write everything out. So it's just easy. It can be done by me. It can be done by someone new to the organization, like an intern, if they're just need extra things to do. So it's a pre-written script where it kind of breaks it down really quickly. Hey, my name's Val. Here's what we do. Here's our directory. Do you mind if we ask you the following questions in order to make sure the information we have for you is correct? Usually they say yes, which is great. And then we just go through the list of questions. So it's really streamlined and easy, and helps us get the job done as quick as humanly possible. Because I always say, like, we're not machines. We're not perfect. And when people do spot inconsistencies or things that are incorrect in our directory, I'm honestly so thankful, because it's like, it saves me time when they, email us and say, oh, actually, this is, not listed correctly. Could you mind fixing it? I love when people do that. So feel free to do that whenever, if you guys ever come across one that isn't looking right, because that saves us time, and it just speaks to the greater benefit of collaboration and community with these listings. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I love the idea of scheduling it out, focusing on a specific location and scheduling that out throughout the year so that you can stay on top of it. I think that's really smart for really any work of managing your time. All right. So from our audience, we have a question that is, what liabilities did your shelter encounter during the first year of enactment, and how did you overcome them? I believe this question is for Jaki, who provided co-sheltering. Oh, I'm sorry, Jaki, you're muted.
Mute. We actually didn't have any issues with insurance or any really serious incidents that would have that we would even have had to contact insurance for in the whole time we've been doing this. The thing that our insurance providers asked for us before we move forward officially was just a copy of our policies. And the idea was, if we covered everything that we could think of that could possibly go wrong, if we had if we were showing due diligence in trying to prevent anything that could possibly happen, if we could show that we were taking this seriously, then they didn't have any issues whatsoever. Now, I have heard of many shelters who have insurance issues all the time, not even shelters with pets sometimes, but no, I think that's why we put on our list that one of the critical things to do is have your policies and practices totally up to date, and problem solve as much as you can in advance, and show that you're doing your due diligence to keep everybody safe. Does that answer it?
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Okay.
I think that's a great point of, like, It's another reason of like kind of don't let those what ifs stop you because frequently you're not going to run into the things that you're most concerned about. The impact and the benefit is going to be much greater than any liabilities that come into play. All right, we have another question, which is what lessons learned are most important for DV shelters when looking into this for the first time to consider? So I would say anyone could answer this question. What lessons have been learned when you're offering new services for survivors and their pets?
I would say ask questions. I think I learned a lot of lessons when I first started in the sense of like, I still run into this, like knowing if a survivor's pet has been up to date on their vaccinations. That's always a hiccup in the sense of like I'm ready to shelter them or foster the dog or whatever, or the cat, and I find out that the pet is not vaccinated, which enters a delay because I can't place that dog into a pet boarding facility or with a foster without up-to-date vaccinations. Did I freeze on you guys? Okay, I thought I froze. That's one of the hiccups, and I learned. Then it became an expense from the nonprofit because then I had to get these pets vaccinated because that wasn't always the resources available for the survivor to get the pets vaccinated. They still needed to be housed. And so just recognizing just the other things that come into play when you're housing a survivor's pet. And you may not thought vaccinations, and then they may not have the records or may have access to calling their vet. And that's how I even do it now. One of my things in general on our social media is to even for all of us, we should have our pets' vaccination records just on our phone, just in case of an emergency, whatever might happen, just so we have that readily accessible in the case of an emergency, such as being able to flee an abuser or a natural disaster or just anything that you want to be able to have that information accessible.
Yeah, my best advice would be you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We hear that saying a lot, but there are so many fantastic existing resources. There's handbooks, there's webinars, there's presentations. So just do your research in whatever area you're interested in supporting survivors with pets, and there will surely be something. And if there's not something, I would say be open to asking. I mean, I'm sure all of us, organizations, we get requests all the time, people asking specific questions specific to their community, their area. And I think a lot of us are really always happy to answer those questions as best we can. So I would say that would be my best advice.
I am just going to quickly say that we get a lot of calls at Bethesda House asking us how we've done what we're doing. Not a lot of people following through yet, but some are. And I've gotten calls all the way from down east across into, Vancouver, Western Canada from shelters. And our agency, me specifically as the team lead, we share our policies. I do a larger, longer presentation to their board members or to their staff when they're in the process of making decisions so that they can ask me the what ifs and how they were dealt with. So talking to somebody who's already done it can be, they say, is being a big help to them anyway. And I'm willing to do that with anyone. We share our policies broadly, and they're not that many. And we don't expect every shelter to apply them exactly the same as we do because every shelter is different. But having something in writing that you can pick apart with a group of people and personalize and make it important for your own shelter makes it easier for you to achieve what you want to achieve. As you said, Val, you don't have to recreate the wheel. You can learn from other people. Yeah.
That's such a valuable resource to offer. So thank you for that. And hopefully people will take you up on it. Okay, our next question. A drawback with fostering/sheltering pets of DV survivors in my city is what to do with pets who are abandoned by their person at the shelter or with the foster family. Is this something that Orazie or Jaki, have you guys encountered this before?
I have not encountered that before, but we have a contract that the survivor signs and that the foster signs, and that when they go into a pet boarding facility, the survivor has to sign that contract too. So whatever, and but ideally the pet's only staying in the boarding facility for a short window. So they necessarily wouldn't abandon them there. The foster would get them. Or in the event that we can't find a foster, the survivor does have to come back and get the pet. And so we always stress that I cannot guarantee that I will find you a foster within 7 days, because unfortunately across the country there is there's a housing situation with pets in the sense of like it's hard to find fosters. Definitely in really huge metropolitan areas it's hard. So we can't guarantee that. So I'm really clear on with the survivor that if it's happened in 7 days, you have to be able to do that. And so people have been respectful of that. And then they appreciate the 7 days of like a reprieve, I'll say, in the sense that we can't say that longer. But I haven't had that happen, thankfully. But I hope that doesn't happen. But also I tell people that because I've had that question asked of me from a person, and I was like, we'll just go through the process, unfortunately, of surrendering that pet, because a lot of this happens, and I'm in Atlanta, so I can't help someone in Nashville or in LA that someone has abandoned their pet with a foster or a pet boarding facility. I say you have to follow your protocol, and our protocol is relinquish that pet to a pet animal rescue organization in your city. But that hasn't happened, but that's our policy, as our contract.
Since 2003, so in over 20 years, we've had it happen twice. But again, we're preemptive. We have a discussion with our women to talk about what happens if they can't take their pet with them. We word it so we don't use the word if you happen to abandon your animal, but if we say, if something happens to you, what would your backup be if you weren't in shelter? Who would you want to take your animal? Do you have anyone who would take your animal? Do you have, parents who might take your animal for you? Who is your emergency backup for your animal? And if in one instance the animal was abandoned, we were able to find a foster, and that foster adopted as opposed to fostered the animal. So in those two instances, I think just being, again, having in advance what your plan would be was really, really helpful.
That's fantastic to hear that abandonment really just hasn't been part of your experience, or, a very minimal part of your experience. And that's been my experience too.
Sorry, and I mean, a lot of the women who come, not a lot, but some of the women who come into shelter are dealing with really serious, perhaps addiction issues, mental health issues as a result of what they've gone through or not. And there's always the possibility that they aren't going to be able to care for their animal. And that's why we talk with every woman about the possibility, because we know for some it's more possible than others. Maybe they get into an addiction rehab and then go into a second stage housing and can't even take the animal. So we have to think about these things in advance.
Yeah, great point. Okay. Well, folks, feel free to continue asking your questions in the Q&A section in the Whova app. Val, some people see pets as a secondary concern in crisis situations. How do you think we could shift the narrative to reinforce that keeping survivors and their pets together is critical for their safety and recovery?
Yeah, this is such a great question. I mean, we here all know, everyone that's on this call knows that pets are critical to the recovery of the survivor. Survivors experience such immense emotional support from their pets. Being forced to leave them behind, it's something that you or I can't even imagine. I mean, the thought of leaving my pet like for 4 hours, I want to cry. I like don't even want to leave the house without her. So I can't even imagine being put in that position where I can't take her with me. I think it causes a lot of additional trauma, anxiety, to not know what the fate of what would happen to your pet. I mean, the literature suggests this as well, that it can even deter them from seeking help from a domestically violent situation. So I think integrating domestic violence pets into the domestic violence services we're actually protecting the mental well-being of the survivors themselves. It's not a pet issue. We always say it's a survivor issue. So it just is a more trauma-informed approach to survivors because it's taking into consideration them as a whole person, not just their experience as someone that went through abuse, but their experience as a human that has a whole life outside of that abuse. They have their pet, maybe their family, children. So taking that into account as well, I think is so key.
Thanks, Val. That actually leads us into our next question, which is how does providing services that allow survivors to maintain custody of their pets align with trauma-informed care? And what steps can organizations take to ensure that their programs are designed to support both survivors and pet well-being? And I'll hand this off to Jaki.
Okay. Well, we believe and work under the idea that trauma-informed counseling is the place to start with our survivors, and understanding their background and what they've been through when they're telling their story. And we're trying to respond in a manner that respects the trauma they've been through while still trying to move them forward. We can respect the life they've had with their animals. We can respect the animals have been their saving grace, say during their abuse. And we can respect the fact that their animals are going to be part of their recovery after. So I think in taking into consideration the trauma they've had, the trauma of coming to a shelter, and then the journey they have ahead of them, we're respecting their life, we're respecting their trauma, and we're helping them keep one of the things in their life that is going to strengthen their resilience moving forward. So you have to understand trauma-informed counseling, and you have to understand the role the pet has played throughout their journey.
Thank you for sharing. And this is going to be our second to last question directed at Orazie, which is partnering across sectors, such as animal welfare and domestic violence shelters and other social services, is essential. And you shared this as part of your presentation, but it's essential to providing comprehensive support. What successful partnerships have you been a part of, and what advice do you have to other organizations looking to build that cross-sector collaboration?
Okay, I'm going to answer that question. I'm also going to mention something that Jaki mentioned. I thought it was an answer to that as well. And that is like when we acknowledge people that have pets, even in our services to them, by even asking when they call, like for whatever reason, do you have a pet? That is acknowledging them as a person and really taking account that their pet is a part of their family. I think sometimes that question is not even asked in terms of being able to foster services for someone, and that lack of asking, people may not feel that maybe that's an unimportant issue for you. So maybe I should mention the fact that I have a pet and that's going to hinder me from leaving an abuse situation or leaving whatever the situation is. So I just wanted to mention that as well in terms of like really acknowledging what people are going through and asking the question, do you have a pet, as part of your exit plan? Okay, but back to partnerships. One of the most biggest partnerships I started and still with us today is DoBird. DoBird is, many of you may know, is a foster network that covers across the U.S. and it really allows us to tap into about 30,000 fosters across this country, across the United States. And so I think that partnership has really allowed us to really support survivors across the states. I have a thing that my pastor used to say, many hands make light work. We cannot do this alone. It takes many people doing different things. I love Safe Haven's website. I use it. Thank you so much. So it's just really, it takes a lot of us. Like, I don't know everything, but the four of us know a lot more than I know 4 times as much hanging out with you guys. And hanging out with everyone on this call as you all contribute to the space. That's what I tell people. So it's just maintaining those partnerships and really just leaning into that and just recognizing that I don't know everything and you know more than me, and I want to learn from you and glean from you. Like I've learned a lot about Canada and about the resources that are there for women that are going through it. I love, like, really, I would say rebels like Jaki who would sneak in pets into the shelter. That's amazing. I love it. And so that's just recognizing and acknowledging that pets are an important part of our lives. And just, I know that we've come into a season, at least in the US, where pets are like children, but pets have always been a part of our families. It looks differently, but we still cared about them. We just have to acknowledge that in how we interact with people and how we serve them in the most effective way that really leads to life choices and life changes for that person in their healing process.
Thank you so much. Well, we are wrapping up. We've come to the end of our session. Thank you guys so much. I have one more question, if folks can just hang on, is if someone is interested in connecting with one of our panelists, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Email. I don't know how to get that out to everybody necessarily, but
It should be part of your Whova, your email address information should be part of your Whova profile. So
yes, it is. So people can access that through,
I
okay.
believe so, yeah.
Yeah, same. Email is a great way to contact us. I think my phone number is also on the Whova presenter profile. Also on our Safe Haven social media. So Safe Havens for Pets on Instagram, Facebook, and X. You can find us. We're posting all the time, talking about programs that are popping up and existing, spotlighting them. So you can definitely engage with us there.
Well, I know all of you are already following Praline's Backyard on all the social media presentation earlier, but you're definitely welcome to look at the information in the Whova app. It's in there as well, but definitely look forward to having at least 28 new followers when I log off. So thank you all so much.
Thank
I
you
want
guys
you
so
as my
much.
marketing person. Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to learn more about co-sheltering for survivors of domestic violence. And we look forward to connecting with you in the future. Thank you so much to our panelists for sharing your knowledge. And I hope everyone enjoys their evening.
You too. Good day.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.